Flux, the podcast. Twin Peaks special. In these special episodes, Flo and Max dive deep into the mysterious world of Twin Peaks. From the Black Lodge to damn good coffee. From giants and owls to analyses and interpretations. And even conversations with the original actors. This podcast is not what it seems.
Hello! Here is the Blue Flex Force, and sitting next to me is my Blue Rose, Flo. In this episode, we discuss the music of Twin Peaks. Let's get started. In Lynch's mind, music, imagery, and narrative were inextricably intertwined, so he has asked Angelo Badalamenti to imagine he was alone in the woods at night. The wind was blowing, an owl was hooting. Badalamenti chose an ominous, deep motive. Slow down. Lynch said, "Just slow things down and it becomes more beautiful." Now, he said, imagine a desperate young girl emerging from the darkness and coming closer. Badalamenti climbed the keyboard higher and higher, resolving the melody into a static high before falling back into the night. It took only 20 minutes, and Badalamenti suggested that he develop the melody further. But Lynch replied, "Don't change a single note. I'm watching Twin Peaks." They had just written Laura Palmer theme.
The soundtrack album, an international hit, infiltrated pop on an unprecedented scale and was a paid homage by artists such as Anthrax, Marilyn Manson, KLF and Moby, who began his career with incorporating Laura Palmer's theme into his rave track Go. Those who loved Twin Peaks also loved Badalamenti's music, which he called my most important work as a composer. When you hum the first notes of the opening theme, you're immediately transported to another world, says Jamie Stewart of the Los Angeles-based band Shoo Shoo. Aside from the timpani in 2001, A Space Odyssey, there's almost nothing quite as evocative.
Yet in recent years, it has once again captivated pop. It can be discovered implicitly or explicitly in Lana Del Rey's doomed prom queen, Bastille's song Laura Palmer, the gothic pop of Sky Fiera's Palmer quoting "Nighttime, my time", the sweet yet sober atmosphere at the band Beach House, and much more. At a benefit concert Lynch organized in Los Angeles in 2015, the Flaming Lips, Karen O, Solar Jesus and Duran Duran played music from Twin Peaks and his films.
It's timeless, isn't it? Says Claire Nina Norelli, an Australian musician and author of the new book Soundtrack from Twin Peaks. I went to see Fire Walk with Me in Melbourne a few weeks ago, and 18 years old were scrambling to buy the soundtrack on vinyl. Every generation discovers it and falls in love with it.
And now back to Angelo Badalamenti, the mastermind behind the soundtrack of Twin Peaks. Badalamenti grew up in a musically oriented Sicilian-American family in Brooklyn and began composing on the piano at the age of 10. After graduating from the Manhattan School of Music, he built a diverse resume under the name Andy Bedell. He wrote songs for Nina Simone, composed musicals, scored crime films. In 1985, a colleague introduced Badalamenti to Lynch, who was looking for a vocal coach for Isabella Rossellini. Lynch was so impressed that he commissioned him to compose the film's score. Unable to afford Song to the Siren from This Mortal Coil, Lynch gave Badalamenti some lyrics and asked him to write something in the same dream pop vein as the theme for the film. "Make it like the wind, Angelo," was his typical instruction. "It should be a song that floats on the sea of time."
In 1989, Badalamenti and Lynch assembled a band of veteran session musicians, including jazz drummer Grady Tate and innovative guitarist Vinnie Bell, in a seedy Times Square studio in New York to work on 3 symbiotically linked projects: Twin Peaks, Cruise's album Floating into the Night, with lyrics by Lynch, and the avant-garde stage musical Industrial Symphony No. 1. Cruise's song Falling mutated into the Twin Peaks theme, and she appeared in the show as a roadhouse chanteuse.
Julie Cruz was amused in this collaboration, Norelli says. There's always a duality in his films, and she was a living embodiment of the Lynchian innocence.
Badalamenti is a master storyteller, says Rachel Zafira of Cat's Eyes, who opened their live shows with a reworking of the Twin Peaks theme. He'll be in the woods, really dark, really insignificant, and it's almost crushing. Then, when he goes up to the major scale, you can almost see the sun shining through. It's so simple. He just goes up 5 notes on a scale and you get goosebumps.
Pieces from the television series and film for their 2016 album, Shushu plays the music of Twin Peaks. They were amazed how extraordinary, simple the most famous and enduring pieces are, Stewart says. Almost nothing happens, but you take to this fantastic, emotional, dramatic place. It's like an Rothko painting, 3 colors in a perfect arrangement.
Stewart was too young to see the initial airing of Twin Peaks, but has since watched the series 5 or 6 times. The same goes for Bastille frontman Dan Smith, who was obsessed with it as a teenager and fascinated that something so surreal could become a mainstream hit. David Lynch was my idol, he says. Our whole aesthetic of the first album owed a lot to him. With Laura Palmer, I wanted to capture the urgency of the image, of her getting off a motorcycle and running through the woods. We reworked it with a riff from the title track on one of our mixtapes. I loved that the fans were like, "Who is Laura Palmer? Is that your ex-girlfriend?" I still hear people say, "Thanks for introducing me to Twin Peaks."
Now, a second layer of nostalgia for the 90s has deepened the mystique of the series. Over time, the sound of Twin Peaks merged with the music of films like Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, especially Chris Isaak's noir song Wicked Game, and Mulholland Drive to create a Lynchian quasi-genre. The music is very romantic, but it can also be terrifying. It has violence and sentimentality, sadness, but not despair.
After Twin Peaks, for which he won a Grammy, Badalamenti always had a lot to do. He collaborated with the Pet Shop Boys, Orbital and Bowie, wrote the opening music for the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, and scored dozens of films, while his wonderful relationship with Lynch continued in 3 more films and inevitably in the new series of Twin Peaks. I understand David and he understands me, Badalamenti once said. I listen to him and I start hearing things almost immediately.
You could put the opening theme to a really boring piece of footage, and the footage would suddenly feel much more meaningful. You could listen to it a million times and it would never get annoying or lose emotions. How many times can you watch a film from the beginning to the end? Music lasts longer. And now to our second topic, similar bands and Twin Peaks style music. Flo, do you have a favorite band or a musician in the Twin Peaks universe or in a Twin Peaks style?
Yes, Max. Indeed, I have 2 artists written down in the preparation for the podcast. And one of them is Annie, the Norwegian singer-songwriter. Mm-hmm. The last album of hers is pretty much along the lines of Twin Peaks. Annie is very underrated and doesn't get the attention she deserves. The album is called Dark Hearts and it was my favorite album of last year. In a review, I read the album is a soundtrack to a film that doesn't exist, and I found it beautiful. But I would say it could be a soundtrack for a Lynch movie, actually. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of songs to point out, but my favorite is slow-paced and majestic, The Untold Story, which actually reminds me a bit of Julie Cruz's Mysteries of Love from the Blue Velvet, Velvet soundtrack. But it could also underline emotional sequences on the Roadhouse. Just like Julie Cruz, her music relies a lot on reverb effects, both in the instrumental and vocals, which makes it feel dreamy, ethereal and otherworldly. The opener In Heaven is a bit more accessible than The Untold Story, has some very cool synthesizer beats and an ecstatic chorus. With its nostalgic vibes, it fits quite perfectly to the Roadhouse atmosphere, and the lyrics is very romantic as it deals with a desire to stay together with a loved person even after their lifetime. The album Finisher, It's Finally Over, is way more buoyant and has sound elements that resembles 1950s pop, even a bit bossa nova rhythm, so it pretty much fits the retro aesthetics of Twin Peaks. Another artist I have written down is Bad for Lashes. She's also a dream pop / synth pop artist who actually names Twin Peaks as one of her main inspirations. Check out especially the song Daniel. It's maybe a bit too up-tempo to be a typical Roadhouse song, but in terms of synth, atmosphere and the tone of her voice, it plays in the same league as many of the Roadhouse hits of season 3. This is even more true for some of her latest album songs, Joe's Dream or I Will Love Again. And actually 10 years ago she released a song called Laura, and people used to speculate whether it's about Laura Palmer. It has some ambient darkness surrounding it. And there are lines that suggest a similarity. It's about a girl who is very popular, beautiful, but at the same time lonely. A girl who is stuck in a dream but experiences a horror show, as it's called in the song. And once it says, smile is so wide and her heels are so high, which could be a hint to a partly seductive role she plays in Fire Walk With Me. I guess you also collected some very interesting artists that are pretty much along the lines of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the bands that come close to the vibes of Twin Peaks and Badalamenti is Boron and their Club of Gore. It's a German name, but they are well known internationally. They had these wonderful albums like Black Earth, Sunset Mission, and my personal favorite, Dolores. And from that album is the song Ganz leise kommt die Nacht. Quietly comes the night. We put a link in our show notes for all you music fans out there. Boron and the Club of Gore, their music is so dragonly slow that it creates a tension that is almost unbearable. In a Boron song, if you can even call it an elongated mediations of this band song, traditionally never many notes are played. Precisely because so little happens, Boron and the Club of Gore make every note an event. A cinephile right from the borderland of jazz. Matt Black with some colorful depths from the universe whose aesthetics have been associated with David Lynch for a good 40 years. That was my first tip, and the second is Beach House. This name appeared earlier in our music analyze. I picked the song Wishes because when you watch this clip, you ultimately discover a very familiar face from Twin Peaks starring as a main protagonist. Au revoir Simon, the Chromatics, or Nine Inch Nails have already performed at the Bang Bang Bar or the Roadhouse. Beach House haven't been there yet, but I've been hoping for it since the first episode. Probably no other band would be so predestined for it. One YouTube commenter stated that Beach House has always been more Twin Peaks than Twin Peaks ever was. That was our excursus in the history of music in Twin Peaks. And here is our guest for this month's episode. She has a vocal range of 3 octaves, has already sung at the Club Silencio, and was one of the musical highlights in The Return. Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks singer Rebecca Del Rio. Hello, Mr. Rio, and welcome to our Flex the Podcast Twin Peaks special. It's so wonderful to have you as a guest.
Hallo, ich bin Rebecca Del Rio of Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks The Return and Southland Tales and Sin City and all kinds of beautiful movies. I'm so happy to be here on this podcast with you. Dankeschön. Hello to all your listeners. Thank you so much for joining us today.
And without further ado, we come to question number 1. How did you react when David Lynch asked you to perform your song No Stars at the Roadhouse in Twin Peaks The Return?
Well, when it comes to No Stars at the Roadhouse in Twin Peaks The Return, David didn't ask me if I would sing our song that we had written a few years back. I told him in an email, I said, David, don't you think No Stars would be a great song for your continuation of Twin Peaks? And he replied, why, yes, I do, Rebecca. And the rest is history. And what a history it was. What a wonderful opportunity that was to resurface almost 15 years later in a chevron dress that, by the way, I bought. And be able to sing a song that David and John Neff and I wrote together. No Stars is a beautiful song, and it really represents that sadness and that longing and that hope and that tragedy all at once.
How do you think your style of music, your vocals, and the whole mood fits into the Twin Peaks universe?
Well, I think my style of music, the vocals and the mood, it really does fit into the Twin Peaks universe because my vocals are quite tragic, haunting and sad and mysterious, yet they are uplifting to some. And that is totally what Twin Peaks is about. I also love being the only dark-skinned Latina in the series. It really does make my demographic feel inclusive in this world David created, and I absolutely love that.
This wasn't your first work with David Lynch. You sang Llorando at the Club Silencio in Mulholland Drive. How did this came and how did you met him?
No, it wasn't my first work with David. I did sing Llorando at Club Silencio in Mulholland Drive. As we all know, it's 20 years now, the anniversary of that beautiful film. And, well, I met David through our mutual agent, actually, and this was in 1998, I believe. And I was in Nashville. I had gotten a record deal through Giant Records, Irving Azoff, through Warner Brothers, and I was coming back to Los Angeles to do my photo shoot for the record, and my agent took the opportunity to make an appointment for me to meet David Lynch. And when he asked me if I would be interested in meeting David Lynch, I immediately asked him, wait, Twin Peaks David Lynch? And he agreed, yes, that's the same David Lynch. And then I asked, Blue Velvet David Lynch? And he said, yes, that's the same David Lynch. Wild at Heart David Lynch? Yes, same David Lynch. The answer would be yes. Absolutely. I would love to meet him. So he set a meeting up with the Master of Strange, and I showed up David's house, and his house also includes a beautiful theater and studio. And that was the first time I had met John Neff as well. David's a longtime engineer and collaborator on Blue Bob and many of the soundtracks, and then, of course, on No Stars. And so my agent had asked me to sing my song, Llorando, which is the Spanish language version of Roy Orbison's Crying. And I had been singing that song for years prior. As a matter of fact, I did receive my record deal and my management deal, my agency deal, my publicist deal, all with that one song. So I knew that it really hit a chord in people. And so when I started to sing to David in his studio, I just stood up and started to sing the beginning, and I went through maybe half of the song, and David said, stop, please stop. And I thought, oh, he doesn't like it. This is the one person who doesn't like it. And he said, that's beautiful. Any chance you can go into that studio booth, that vocal booth there? John Neff and I have just fired up one of the top Telefunken tube mics. There's only maybe 4 in the whole world. We've just fired that up. I would love to hear how you sound through that mic. Would you do that for me? I said, sure, I'd be happy to. So I went into the vocal booth. I put the cans on, the headphones. And he said, now let's just start from the beginning and go all the way through. Okay, shall do. So I did. And it was the most beautiful experience because that Telefunken tube mic is incredible. Unbelievable. I had never performed in a studio with a mic that incredible and that expensive. And by the way, I'm so grateful to have a sponsorship from Telefunken at this time. So I definitely want to put a shout out there for Telefunken. They make the most amazing mics. So after I finished singing Llorando, the one thing that I'll never forget after that long ending note, David said this, well, ding, dang, Rebecca Del Rio, that was aces. And I remember thinking, this is the strangest man I have ever met. The most delightful and strangest man. And I was very happy that he enjoyed it as much as he did and asked me to sing it twice. So after that, we had some coffee, and I was on my way. I, went on with my life and didn't really know much more about that until that day that my agent called me and said that David was haunted by my song, and he couldn't stop listening to it. And I had no idea that David actually recorded what I had sang to him that day, that fateful day. So I was a little confused, and I wondered if he had heard something else that I had recorded previously. No, it was crying. It was llorando, and it made him obsessed. It inspired him, and my agent said he was so moved and so inspired. You're his muse, Rebecca. He's created an entire scene just for you in his new series called Mulholland Drive. It's going to be on ABC. It's going to be very similar to Twin Peaks, and he wants you to be like the Vonda Shepherd. Every episode you'll be singing a song. I think it's a great opportunity for you. You need to come back to LA and be on film. Would you do that? And I said, of course I will. That's exciting. Of course I will. Are you kidding? I was very, very excited and humbled and honored, and also a little worried that, my voice was, taken from me without my permission, but it all worked itself out now, didn't it? So just a lesson for anyone out there who is a new singer or someone who's not familiar with how the business works. Anytime someone says to you, go ahead and sing on that mic, little lady, that mic is on and they are recording. So make sure you get something in writing that says that belongs to you. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Mulholland Drive turns 20 this year. Is there anything in the pipeline from you to celebrate that?
I cannot believe it's the 20th anniversary of the very first movie I was ever in. And I really believe probably the best scene I have ever had. And I just am so proud of it. I'm so grateful for it. And it's critically acclaimed, one of the top movies in the history of cinema. I'm really excited and honored to have been a part of that very special film. And so with that said, I have been embarking upon a national tour here in America where I am performing at art house theaters that run 35 millimeter screenings of Mulholland Drive, and I'm doing shows where I sing many of the songs from the movies that I've been in, not just Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks, but Sin City and also Southland Tales. I'm very much looking forward to continuing that tour, and hopefully I'll make it to Deutschland with the same program, and I'd love to see all of you. That would be fantastic. I will also be doing Q&A. I'll be doing autograph sessions and selling merchandise, one-of-a-kind merchandise. We've got this beautiful, beautiful Polaroids that we had made in the city of Austin, Texas, by these beautiful photographers. One of my favorites is Candice Guy, stunning photographer. Also does Christabel, for those of you who are in the Twin Peaks world and you know all about Agent Tammy. F you, Tammy. And I'm not sure if you'd like to cut this out, but fuck you, Tammy. So we do these Polaroids. They're one of a kind. I may be able to bring some to Deutschland if you come to see me. I might have some for you. We're working on a vinyl that is a commemorative vinyl to celebrate not only the 20th anniversary of Mulholland Drive, but it is the 60th anniversary of the release of Crying by Roy Orbison, which was also written by Joe Melson. And it's David's 75th year on the planet. So there's so much to celebrate, and we missed celebrating the 30th anniversary of Twin Peaks last year, so we're kind of doing that this year too. So there's so much to celebrate, and I'm really excited about this new vinyl that's coming out pretty soon. It's going to have Crying in Espanol a cappella on one side, and the other side is a mystery song that all of you know, but you've never heard before. Doesn't that sound like something David would say? It's like the love story in the City of Dreams. I love that answer.
The last question. Have you watched Twin Peaks The Return? And if so, what do you think about the ending?
Yes, I have indeed watched all of Twin Peaks, the whole series, several times. And watching The Return was extra special because I, like many of us cast members, had no idea when our bits were coming up, unless we were obviously like Kyle MacLachlan, of course he knew. Laura Dern knew, but not very many of the rest of us knew, especially the musical acts, because we literally all filmed our musical bits on one day in one place. So it was just a your guess is as good as mine kind of thing. And it was so hush-hush, we really couldn't say anything. And even if we did get wind of when it or where it might occur, we were very excited. So, of course, we watched every single one of them just because they're fantastic. And then, episode 10 comes along, and sure enough, there I am singing No Stars, and it was just so beautifully filmed. My God, the cinematography was incredible. I literally would love to walk around the planet with that light and makeup and hair and, set. I would just like to walk around looking like that every single day. That would be nice. Well, it was really a stunning job that everyone did, and I was very proud. And, I felt really special that David really wanted everyone to hear the entire song. I mean, we wrote it. David wrote the poem, and then on the same day, I heard the track one or two times that John wrote and also performed along with David and engineered. I was asked to write it in Spanish on the spot, come up with the melody on the spot, and the structure for a song. So I did. So it is definitely a labor of love, something that David and I and John worked on together, and each equal parts. I was very, very proud that David chose to share the majority of that song. Up into the credits, I was very impressed and grateful, because I think that was really nice. I think people really love the song. I sure do. It's a lovely song. As far as the end of Twin Peaks: The Return, there were many parts that I did enjoy, and there was a part that really broke my heart, and it was when the log lady speaks to Hawk, really, actually right before I come on and sing at the Roadhouse. She's telling him this beautiful, beautiful things about Laura and the stars, and just knowing that was the last time beautiful Catherine Coulson was ever going to be on film. It was just heartbreaking, but still so surreal that I got to be in that scene with her, in that same episode. And now that Richard Green is putting together I Knew the Log Lady, it's just even more of a connection. And you'll have to check that out too. It's going to be fantastic. It's just a very moving scene for me. And it sets it up really well, especially since, No Stars is a lot about loss, a lot about, heartache. And we all know about that, don't we? So I think the ending is definitely classic David Lynch tease. I met Clark Middleton before he passed away, and he was brilliant. And I also know and have spent time with Sherilyn Fenn, and her scene, was incredible, where you really don't know if she's in a mental ward or dreaming completely. And it reminds me of Mulholland Drive, tragedy in dreams. It haunted me for quite a while, and I think I'm not alone in that.
There's a small bonus question. In our Facebook conversation, you said that you love Germany. Why is that so?
So, the bonus question, I like bonus questions. I can answer that. Yes, I love Germany. Germany is amazing, and it's like my second home. I have extended family in Aachen. Yeah, and I've spent many Christmases there. I love the Christmas markets, and I love Cologne. Oh, it's really beautiful. Yeah, sehr schön. And I speak a tiny bit of German. I know about 90 words. I just don't know how to string them together. I understand a lot of it, but I love Germany. It's a beautiful place, a beautiful country. And I'm looking forward to going back when it's not so dangerous to travel and COVID is behind us. I shall be there. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real pleasure to be here, and I hope that I will be able to see you very soon in an art house theater near you.
Thank you so much for being our guest.
Dankeschön.
Goodbye.
Bis bald. Tschüss.
Thank you for listening.
And we hear us again already in the next month to another Twin Peaks special episode.
We say goodbye for now. I'm Max.
And I am Flo.
Goodbye.
Bye.